Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat Five segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show.
Hey there, this is Nick Baglio, and I'm Ben's guest on this week's Big Fat Five.
What is up? Welcome back to Big Fat Five, a podcast financially supported by Big Fat Snare Drum. This week's guest, as you just heard, is Nick Baglio, aka Nicky Bags with 2 Z's. Can't believe it's taken me this long to get him on the damn podcast. If you follow Big Fat Snare Drum on Instagram, he's literally the most reposted account because A, he's an amazing drummer and so creative, to the point where I don't even know how to begin to describe what he's doing sometimes, but also B, he just captures a really powerful sound and it's super inspiring. In high school, he was continuously selected for all-state and all-region jazz bands, which helped him earn a full music performance scholarship to study drums at University of Miami, where he started playing with everyone in town. He's done all the travels and currently splits his time between teaching, recording, and performing, with his home being Raleigh, North Carolina. He's the shit, I love him, and I hope you enjoy getting to know him just a little bit by learning about the 5 records that shaped him into the drummer he is today. All right, cheers.
It's great to finally to meet you, and albeit through a camera. That's the trend these days, or these past few years anyway, right?
I know. Well, no, that's what I was going to say. That's why I wanted to start recording, because you've become such a part of my daily life with either you tagging us. I mean, really, with you tagging us, or it's just
sorry.
Just DMing weird stuff back and forth.
Right.
But I'm happy to finally get you on the podcast because obviously you're an insane drummer. You're a really goofy dude, and so we have a lot of a kinship there. But I really don't know much about you besides that interaction. So I want to, before we get into your top 5, I do want to know a little more about you. So I know you're from New York, but yeah, what role did music play in your life growing up?
First of all, thank you for the kind words. So born and raised on Long Island, and my dad was a professional drummer. So growing up super young, we grew up in Holbrook, and we had a drum set in the house, and my dad, played in a ton of bands, and then he had later on down the road, opened up a recording studio, which became an integral part of being exposed to other musicians and styles of music. And, he would let me sit in on sessions, and I'd just be in the corner sort of taking in the interaction and the reality of what a studio was. Mm-hmm. And later, determining the fate of people's bands that would send VHS tapes to be recorded as a submission. And he would be like, watch these. Let me know what you think when I get home from his other gig. He was an engineer. He worked crazy amounts, but
yeah.
And I'd be like, this one sucked. This one was cool. This 12-year-old just basically like decided whether you got to record in the studio with little to no musical knowledge. But anyhow, he started teaching me when I was super young, and I started playing piano first, actually, and then drums. And so my mom's an artist, so the arts are a huge part of our family, and they were very, very supportive, which I don't thank them enough for every day, because it can be hard, you know, in the opposite universe.
What brought you down to North Carolina?
So there's a chain of events. So I studied in New York with a bunch of private teachers, which we'll probably get into later, and then I went to school in Miami at University of Miami. And then, so I was there for maybe a year after my bachelor's, and then I started working with this band, and then we got signed and went back to New York, and then we started touring a lot, and we were paying all this crazy rent even then, which was laughable now, but to never have a place, you know, we were never there. We were just in a bus or a van. So we just moved to North Carolina because our singer had an aunt, her sister actually was a realtor in North Carolina. So we had a place in the thick of North Carolina, like in the woods, which as a New Yorker, everyone was worried that I would just quit before we even got there, because I was like, North Carolina, get the fuck out of here with that. Like, in
Would you
this
please?
North Carolina, yes. And this North Carolina was like exactly, it was textbook what I was concerned about. And so, but we didn't spend a lot of time there. So I ended up here. I ended up in a town called Lewisburg, and then the band started to dissolve in some regard, and then I started coming to Raleigh, which is where I live now, the capital of North Carolina, and started working with other musicians and, you know, networking and meeting people, and then slowly, then just officially moved here over 10 years ago, I'd say now, and ended up buying a property, and now I'm a full-on North Carolinian. So many of us are New Yorkers. That's the joke, right? Everyone that lives in Raleigh now is like West Coast, New York. So there's not a lot of Southern draw, like within like 5 square miles. Mm-hmm. But then you go outside, and it's just like, oh yeah, right, that's where we are.
What was the name of the band?
That band was called Morissonpoe.
Morissonpoe, okay.
And it was, so this was like during the female-fronted hard rock. So we did some dates with Evanescence and stuff with 30 Seconds to Mars, and it was very cool. It was like that hard. It was everywhere. It was super prevalent, especially in South Florida, and maybe still is. And then we met Nile Rodgers. Like, Nile Rodgers discovered the band, and then we signed with Nile. And that's when we moved back to New York, and then we got some stuff on, like a couple of cool like Xbox OSTs, sort of like a la Breaking Benjamin route. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys, but
oh yeah.
So it was that time, you know, where it was like everywhere, and we had like a video on MTV, which was like a bucket list thing, and it was great. And then I think that music just sort of fell apart, and people moved, and so we all just sort of moved on. But yeah, it was a great 5 or so years, I think, that we were doing that.
Nowadays, what's the ratio of lessons to playing to recording remotely? Like, basically, I guess I should ask, what's the average day in the life of Nick look like? So,
well, I think it's an interesting time. It's a great time to ask that question, because I think pre-apocalypse, it was, I'd say, like maybe 50% on the road, but no longer than like, you know, so my general thing is I sort of play with like 2 or 3 main outfits, like in totally different genres, and try and balance a tour schedule like we all do. And hopefully the big ones don't, you know, and have a sub if you need one who will take care of it. You know, it's like the nature of any, you know, self-employed musician. And that I love to teach, but I also love to record. So the recording thing didn't happen until I bought this place and, learned how to use from scratch, microphones and Pro Tools and that whole learning curve. So I'd be on the road a lot more. And then, the pandemic hit, and obviously all that stuff went away. But I had already been doing the recording thing and the teaching thing, whether it was in person or virtual. So I sort of had a leg up in that regard in terms of being able to keep that going. And thankfully, like even more so, really, right? Because then it was like, well, we're like great drummers were messaging me, like, which was the most flattering thing. Like, I'm here, and I was in the same boat. Like, I was taking lessons, and I was just like, well, if we're here for now, which we thought was going to be 3 months, much to our dismay, but had all this time to work on themselves and their playing, so that like when the doors did open up, everyone would be full scale, like, let's get it. So at this point, a lot of the groups that I'm with are like sort of in the rewriting stage. So I'd say like most days I record, like in the morning I'll come here and I'll record a song, 2 or 3 for somebody, and then do like a couple virtual lessons and then maybe a rehearsal. But I would say like playing out wise, I've also sort of like gotten like acclimated and accustomed to this, like not having to go out. Mm-hmm. So to go on the road, I think I would maybe be a little more choosy now than I was, pre-pandemic, just because like, my wife, I love spending time with my wife and like being gone for long periods of time. There's that aspect. Plus I've got all these relationships with like, I've got a couple clients that I do like jingles for, and they're like sending me things pretty regularly. So that would sort of be abandoned. Mm-hmm. So it'd have to be worthwhile, I guess. But to say I don't miss it would be, total bullshit, because I definitely, there's that element that I think any musician, whatever, that's a part of it. You know what I mean? Like you need to be in front of people and doing that thing live. And so, but I'm sure it's sort of, it comes and goes. And so there's some stuff that will be coming up in the fall, but mostly recording and teaching, to be honest, is most of my time. I think the best part about what we do, so there are a couple of things, like with the touring, there are a couple that went out and came back, as a lot of them are. Like somebody in the camp tests positive, and then the whole thing's a wrap or a reschedule. I'm sure a stranger to any of this, right? I can see it in your face. And so it's super frustrating, but I think the fact, we have to be grateful for what it is that we're able to do, because not that long ago, you couldn't do any of this shit. And no one ever thought that would be a thing, right? So, but I love the variety. I mean, my favorite part about being a musician is the variety, whether it's like variety in genres. Like I love playing a lot of different styles of music, working with different people, and also like different parts. Like you can do recording for a while. You get sick of that. Like you said, you could go out on the road and do the touring thing, hop on a bus for a while. It's to have that to me is the sort of one of the best luxuries of being a self-employed musician, is that like no one's really telling you what you got to do. It's really just what you're up to. I'm building a recording studio, which has like been a huge dream of mine. So I literally have a meeting with the architect on Friday, like to get the final plans. And
is that going to be on your property? Just like a little annex?
Yes. So the long and short of it is, during the pandemic, my wife was working from home. And so this is a very small house located downtown. So, and there's no neighbor complaints or anything. It's like super well insulated, but it's a bedroom. And so she was working upstairs, and so there was obviously a conflict of interest there. Like, oh, she
sounds call, like an angel.
She's like, Nick's playing drums again. That's fun. Cool beats. And so
you're rushing.
Like I think he's dragging. But anyway, we found a place that had a much bigger yard that's like a mile from here. So my commute basically is to the old house, and we're going to build like the proper like mega size drum room with like, so I don't have to fabricate the large sounds. I can get them organically. And so very excited about that.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, very pumped. Thanks.
Well, let's just I know you kind of have a heart out. So let's just get into your top 5.
Wait, hold on a second. Before we get into that, sorry. Yeah. So you're on the West Coast. Did you always live out there, or did you move there recently?
No, I've born and raised. I've never lived on the East Coast. I'm
I thought you were a Mass guy too. I thought you guys were like homies from Massachusetts.
No. So Chris's brother Matt Coma used to be when Eve 6 broke up, and then before they got back together with the original 3 members, the guitarist John was doing another band in the time that they were broken up. So when they got back together, he didn't immediately come back. So Chris's brother Matt joined Eve 6 for like a few years. And so he became really close, Chris, with all the guys from Eve 6. So when I joined Fitness, which is one of Max from Eve 6's side projects, and then ultimately Eve 6, that's how I met Chris. He came out to one of the shows 5 years ago. And so it was right at the time where I had moved to LA probably 6 years ago, and I was trying to balance the still work server life and then also be a full-time musician. And so I had to kind of walk away because I was getting too busy, and my jobs were like, dude, you have to get like 90% of your shifts covered because you're always traveling. So it was about that time that I met Chris, and then like 2 weeks later, wasn't even thinking about getting a job. I was like, dude, you're awesome. I love the company. If you ever need any help, man, it was like almost like a networking buddy thing. And he's like, dude, I'm drowning here, for these few reasons because the company's growing. So how about this many hours a week? Here's your salary. Just go. I know you're going to be touring a lot, so we'll just work it out. And so it just became this organic thing. And then now it's something that I do. Obviously,
you could do
I'm
this
still
stuff
there.
from the road, right? Like that's
as long as I have an internet connection. The only hard thing is on the road. I'm home now. I've been on the road since March 1st, literally with 2 days off. And so finding time that was quiet, where I had Wi-Fi that would work for the guest. So if anyone listening, the last 3 months of podcasts have been so stressful. But didn't miss a week, so we'll see. But yeah, no, I was born and raised in the Seattle area, actually, and then I moved to LA in 2016.
Awesome. Very cool.
All right, so number 1, the album.
This was impossible, man. By
know.
the way, everyone says it, and that's okay. But really, it was so tough. Sorry, I just totally cut you off. My apologies.
No, it's fine. It's just I'm a broken record on this, but people either get mad at me or they thank me because they're like, dude, that was like therapy, and you're mad at me. So great.
No, it's both. It is both. It is both.
All right. So the album is Plantation Lullabies. The release year is 1993, and the artist is Michelle Indeggiocello, and the song is "I'm Digging You," like an old soul record. And it's programmed drums, but you were thinking it was Andre Betts?
Yeah, that's what I was reading. The story that goes along with this is sort of like one of the funniest things. It goes along with 2 of these records, but I'll let you play it, and then I'll tell you that story. It's pretty funny. Man, she can play the bass.
Oh my God, yeah.
Sit back, relax, and listen to the 8-track. I dig it like an old soul record.
It's so in there.
Mm-hmm.
I dig it like an old soul record, baby. Just sit back, relax, and listen to the 8-track.
It's cool that what they programmed then is still legitimate now, albeit the sounds like a little dated. Obviously, early 90s.
But even so, I mean, if The Weeknd came out with like this right now, people would just go, okay, it's contemporary again.
That's great, yeah. It's all full circle, it feels like.
Freedom was at hand and you could just taste it. It was so cool. Digging on me, digging on you. Everything was cool. My brothers were saying, ain't no love another one I got, baby, baby. So I'm digging you. Digging like an old soul record.
Yeah, I think it was him. I'm not sure who. There were a couple people that programmed on this.
I dig it like an old soul record.
But I had never heard of her. And so the story goes basically that I had been studying with this incredible teacher for a long time, like sort of up until, maybe, I guess around this time when this record was released. And there was another teacher. His name was Kevin Dunn. I don't know if you know, do you know Brian Dunn? Brian Dunn plays with Hall & Oates.
Yes.
Super great dude, amazing player. They're both badasses. And I met Brian years later, and also told him this story. But so it was very hard to get a lesson with Kevin. Like, his roster was full. He was like the guy. And I had just at this point gotten my license. We finally got it in. And so I had my first lesson with this guy. So I'm super nervous, like, one, because I'm driving. And I think I was late because I showed up. Like, I went, Long Island is very simple. You go east and you go west. That's pretty much it. I went fucking west when I was supposed to go east. Showed up late. I'm not good with directions. I'm super nervous anyway. I go to the door and knock, and I'm obviously late. And I'm worried that he's going to be annoyed because we finally got this thing together. And he opens the door, and he has 2 records in his hand, 2 CDs. And he gives me the CDs. One is this. He said, I need you to play with these 2 records, and I'll catch you next week. Closes the door. That was the first lesson. I just sort of like...
Can I get a refund here, sir? Or what's the,
Turned around, went back to the car, and saw him the next week. And so this was the first of those records. And that's literally all I did was play this thing front to back. There's so many great feels, especially on this one. One of the other records is also one of the 5 for different reasons. But, yeah, and it was just like, man, I play with it front and back, and there's just so much, like, she's just so funky. And, like, in terms of this would probably be my first real, like, sort of R&B exposure, at least like intentionally so, where it's like very part oriented, not a lot of room for bullshit, just like hold it down, lock in. And her bass is also so hot in the mix that it's just like so fun to play with this record. So fun.
So he did it more for the bass as opposed to the programmed drums?
I think it was both. It was like, it was the play the part lesson, right? It was like, play the parts, don't deviate. These were programmed. And in a lot of scenarios, and this is funny because this is the 90s, right? He's like, just like they were programmed a certain way on purpose, right? And so if you're going to do this stuff live, you need to stick to exactly what it is. And I know that you're going to have the tendency to want to play some bullshit. And the lesson here is that you just don't. And you stick right to the parts because that's the reality. And the funny thing is, 20 years later, it's the same thing. It's like, if you're going to do these things, like, you may have some, like, the MD may give you some leeway. You'll get a moment, but it's like, don't, with this music, you just stick to the script. And so that was the first lesson where, everything else that I was learning was just like, blah, 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 some bullshit. And then he was like, you play this record as is, play those parts. And when I came back, I had some of it. He was like, you missed this. Nope, the kick's on the E. Don't forget about, like, oh, shit, okay, sorry. So it was great. It was a huge lesson. Just sticking to a groove is the hardest thing ever. I'll say it, hardest thing ever. I'm including everything in my life. All right, number 2. The album is 10 Sumner's Tales. Release year was same year, actually, 1993. The artist is Sting. And the song is 7 Days. And, of course, it's Vinnie Colaiuta. This is the other record.
Oh, okay.
Kind of ultimatum note she gave to me. When I thought the field had cleared, it seems another suit appeared to challenge me. Oh, it's me. Though I had to make a choice.
The funny thing about this song is that so many people think 7 Days is in 7, which has always been, I just thought funny because it's not in 7.
It's in 5, right?
Yeah, it's in 5. And he has a way of making it feel like it's not. And I think that's why he's one of the GOATs, man, because it's just like his entrance to the chorus. Also, his snare sound on this was also like super killing. And you could tell that they were like, on the chorus, you can break it up a little bit when we get back to the verse, though. 4, 5, 1. And later on, he starts doing that. He does like the 4-drop thing. Holy shit, it's so good. This thing, the splash thing. Oh, it's the next one. Right here. This is the 4th thing.
My rival is Neanderthal. It makes me think perhaps I need a drink.
There it is.
IQ is no problem.
Only 2 snares. Hits the 4 twice and then he's out. So brilliant.
It's so good. And yeah, he's keeping the hi-hat going. So it kind of is going back and forth on the beat during that 5 part.
I love the bell. Everything about. I would be hard pressed to know that most drummers have never heard of this record in some way, right? Or, I don't know. Sometimes you assume way too much, but there's so much good stuff on this record between like the first track.
Yeah.
What's that? What's the name of the first one? If I Lose My Faith.
If I ever lose my faith in you, yeah.
The way he broke up this bridge. Oh, so brilliant.
I mean, this that sounds like a program part too, because it's just like sonically he's so consistent. Obviously, time-wise, he's so consistent. But to speak to your point, even if I think some people are nervous to bring up records like this because you hear 10 Sumner's Tales and you're like, okay, but I don't want to talk about it because that's such an iconic drum record, and so you don't bring it up. But I want people to. I'm happy you brought it up because this is a record that should be talked about more. Or some people are nervous to bring up John Bonham or nervous to bring up Dave Grohl. It's like, still talk about it, because if everyone's too nervous to talk about it, then they become this thing that no one talks about.
Yeah, it's taboo. And
yeah.
You're 100% right. And I think when I was doing this, and anyone that has done it or that will do it, there's like that. You start like it's just like river tributary. They start like all these things start coming up, and you're like, oh, that record, and you're like, oh shit, I need to do 5. Here's 42. How do I trim this down? And then you remember another one, and so I also I wanted to do the things that sort of were formative, or as I took the assignment or understood it, like formative at a younger age, like coming up. That sort of like sort of honed where I was going. So the ones that I picked were more like younger. Teenage years, like maybe up to college.
Sure.
And I even like hesitated to put this on because I figured that you would have had so many people.
No.
And it's interesting you're saying the exact opposite, that people like Vinny obviously is a household. If you're saying their first name without their last name, that's your rite of passage. But he is, for all the obvious reasons, like, he can do everything and do it really, really well. And I think the reason, excuse me, that he gave me these records as a pairing were for different reasons. There's like everything about this record in terms of the feels, like the pocket. He sits back on one. Like there's like a shuffly track that like, and it resonates with me because I knew even then, or I aspired to be someone that can blend in to that scenario and not sound like a rock guy playing a country thing, would just to surprise someone ultimately be like, who? Get the fuck out of here. Really?
Yeah.
That, because that's the ultimate compliment, is like, oh, who's on this? And that's why I love the recordings, aspect, which is why I spent years trying to get this together, is because I'm so passionate about making the parts super genuine to what the artist is looking for. And then the next track could be a jingle that's like a fucking, whatever the case is, right? Mm-hmm. And there's that like that age-old like stay in your lane, or imposter syndrome, all these sort of like things that sort of battle it. And for me, it is the best part again of what we do, and his versatility on this record is just like unsurpassed. It's just unbelievable. He's one of the very few that can do the odd meter thing, the pocket thing. He lets him rip on one. It's incredible. Vinny's drumming on this record.
Well, it's cool that different perspectives have their own weight, because you saying that being the chameleon and having people go like, oh, I would have never thought this was Nick, is the ultimate compliment to you. And then to some people, it's like having my thing where you hear it and you can automatically say, oh, that's Nick. And neither of them, it's not a greater equal than, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just whatever you want to accomplish on the instrument. So it's fun to have a different perspective.
Well, and sorry, the caveat to that is, I think you're right, though, because I do appreciate, like, oh, I know that's Bags. I know you have a stamp, but it's like the people that truly know you're playing. Like, if you know a drummer, you can tell immediately that's Tony, or like that's Tane or Bill Stewart, or like they have a very specific sound, and it'd be the ultimate sort of pat on the back is like, oh, it's like you can tell that it's him, but like he's doing his thing, but like really within the guidelines. That's sort of the best case.
Sure.
I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, number 3, and I agree with all that. Number 3, all right, so album's Heads Up. Release year was 1992. And I guess, unfortunately, you should be able to, but there's a lot of Daves. You can't just say Dave. It's Weckl. Dave Weckl.
He goes by because there's too
Damn
many
it.
Daves.
Yeah. But the song is also Heads Up, the titular track. And you said about minute 4:36 is the solo. And, of course, it's Dave Weckl. So let's just listen to it. Let me see if I can get there.
I also learned the word titular from an older podcast that you did. I was like, oh, that's a fun
I learned
one.
it on the podcast, too.
Good. Everyone's
I was like,
learning
what'd
something.
you say? Yeah.
Titular.
Yeah, come on. Keep it clean.
Keep the one. Keep the one. Wait for it.
I mean, the bass player is a real hero right now.
The bass player is programmed. Yeah. This keyboard part is my favorite part. And we're back.
God, dude.
I think Dave to me, so I was introduced, this record to me was the first time I knew that there were things like this that could be played. Like, it was so baffling to me. My teacher, Pete Haywood, who was the guy that like sort of got me into this, because I was like, yeah, man, like I think, I've got some stuff together. And he's like, no, you don't. Listen to this. And then he played this record, which subsequently I think might have been just before. They're all like in the same 3 years, which I think is interesting. I didn't realize that through doing this. But it was like, oh my God, I have no idea even what's happening. Like there's so many things happening, like phrasing and I always feel like Dave, like a lot of drummers either like love Dave or don't. For whatever reason, there's no middle ground, and I just think that his Matt, I talked to Matt, Matt. Yeah, I don't know if you've had Matt on here, Matt Garska, but like I haven't. He's like big into it. It's something about like just effortless expression and phrasing and ideas with no limits that he's able to do. And if you see him play it, if you haven't gotten a chance to to see him or watch any of those, like I had those old tapes, Back to Basics. He's got incredible hair, which I think is probably the number one point of contention. But then also it's swinging around while he's playing like the most mind-blowing like creative ideas, but also it's like it's in there. There's such a difference between folks that are going, which was me when I was learning this stuff. It's like trying to go for that stuff, but it's not in there. And when it is, it's just like magical. And this to me was like, oh my God, I have so far to go. And I would like mow lawns, like listening to this every single day and play with it front to back as much as I could and try and just like absorb any of that information if I could. Super crazy.
How did you compartmentalize that stuff? Did you take, did you go measure by measure at a time? Did you try and emulate it that way? Or like how does your brain work when you try and digest something like that and then try and play that in the kit?
Well, a lot of what he's, in particular, like the segment that we listened to, like there's a lot of stuff on this record that's similar in different lanes, and this stuff in particular, which is like a lot of the stuff that I end up working on, with like more advanced players is like, yeah, you sort of have to you have to micro first, and like what's happening is you have to develop a core set of like vocabulary, right? And what's happening, he's got so many basic tools in his box, and he's able to switch between them effortlessly, seamlessly, without dropping a dime. And so that's what creates those crazy phrases, and his ideas. So he's got the ability to say whatever he wants to say and end wherever he wants to end, and also start where he wants to start. So when you learn these things, you just need to get them, and then it's like, well, how do I start it? I start on the 1. Okay, how do I end it? I end on the 1. Okay, cool. Now start on the E of 1, end on the of 3, and then that's an entirely different skill set. Mm-hmm. And he sort of has all of what I've come to realize through studying, and it's not just him. It's like there's another one on there, I think that I put on there, where you just go through and like, I didn't like outright transcribe any of this stuff because it's just like, it was too much for me. I'd get arthritis in the process, right? But he has a lot of like, he's got a lot of like just basic things that all are, it's like compounded and compounded and compounded again. And so in the beginning, it seemed totally, when I listen to it now, I understand so much more of it now than I did then. But I'll never forget, like when I understood, like there's like a modulation that he goes into there. And I was just like, how is he able to do that and still know where the 1 is? And then when I was able to learn that thing, whether it's like your first beat or that thing, you're like, oh my God, right, of course. And then you hear it and everyone else is playing and you're like, there it is again. It's been around me this whole time and I just wasn't even able to like catch it.
Yep, exactly.
And then when you have that skill, which is what this guy taught me, then it's like, okay, well, I'll just borrow this from anyone that I have access to, right? Which used to be like dating myself here, but like getting the library card, getting the CD burner, you know what I'm talking about? Like, and make some copies. And now everything is like $10 a month free to everybody, that's a whole nother conversation. But if you know how to do that, you can just like fill the bank every day. It's crazy. Yeah,
it's almost like with all these albums at your fingertips, you don't have like you had to have the dedication to that record to go like, I need to go burn this record. So because I've spent the time driving down or asking my mom to drive me down to the library, I need to focus on this record. Now it's like people kind of, a lot of people, and I include myself in this, I'm not being like, get off my lawn. You can just listen to anything that it's harder. You have to have more willpower to deep dive into like specific things.
Man, you're bringing up a topic that's its own podcast, which is it's just the overflow, the excess of information between PooTube and Apple Music and Spotify, like the wrong information, the right information. Like there's no filter, right? So it's like, here's how you play this, and it's like, the fuck, that's not. But it doesn't matter. It's out there, and it's just ADHD. Like, oh, let me start on this. Oh, but I got to work on this. Oh man, my jazz play. Oh, but also, and then nothing gets done.
Yep.
And you're just like, I'm like halfway decent at a whole bunch of things. When you said it, like, here's the only thing that I have, because I can't afford to go buy the new record to distract me from getting this done, you know? And then like you transcribe that record, and then you're like, okay, got it. Let me now I can afford to go get this. Now it's like they're all just like floating in front of you. It's like, you know, dangling in front of you. It's crazy.
Yeah, I would say 80% of my like instincts and like stuff that I'll do are from are from 10 records from when I was younger. And then everything else is like, oh, I'll kind of pick up little things along the way. But all right, so number 4, the album is Tokyo 96. The release year is 1998. Think about that. The artist is Keith Jarrett Trio, and the song is Billy's Bounce. And you said it's Jack fucking D. So almost enough to not say the last name, but it is Jack DeJohnette. So here we go.
Jack DeJohnette. So many memories.
Talk about just pure expression right there.
The way he plays this first chorus.
I want to use just this portion of the video. Just
Jack. Motif. Variation on a theme. And Keith Jarrett, I mean, this is Gary
yeah, you can
Peacock
hear
too,
him. You can hear his voice. Yep.
So from this hit me. I found out about this. I found out about Keith Jarrett. So I was predominantly you're a product of your sort of childhood and your friends and that kind of stuff. So I was a rocker for sure, and I ended up going to school for jazz and studio music. So like I showed up, like the first day of Jazz Combo. This is in Miami, and I showed up, with like my like super aggressive, thick, like Zildjian K at the time, and like a 22-inch kick wide open, and basically just got like laughed right out of class. Like when I showed up with the gear, like don't even set that up. It was like, what I mean, so I had so far to go. And so I just got my ass handed to me for 2 straight years, basically getting immersed in this and learning from everyone. And so a big part of learning any style is listening. I mean, it's number one, like know the history, know the greats, and you're sort of focusing your sound based on, whatever summation of the things that resonate with you. So like you've got the traditional, like I'm also like a an Art Blakey fan and a Philly Joe and like all the original gangsters, but there's something about Jack was the first, that particular trio with Keith and Jack and Gary was like the first time that I really heard an unorthodox way of doing it, and it was just so creative. And then the icing on that cake was that Jack came down to Miami to do a clinic, like a master class. So he spent a week with us, and so like I got to watch him do this. And it used to be that like unless you could be at an event, you couldn't just like access videos on the internet. And there's still nothing like being in the room and feeling the energy of that. Like it was just like I was mini disc the entire thing, right? That was the 5 months that mini disc stuck around. But I had it all, and I just like, it's just so much of that music to me is rhythmic interpretation and conversation, right? And I think that's the most, besides like jazz, learning jazz and independence, and the timing and the touch informs so much of your other playing. If you never played a lick of jazz or a jazz gig in your life, but you still went through the independence, it would make you a better drummer and a better musician. There's just no question about it. A lot of people don't deal with it because it's a giant fucking headache. I mean, it really is. Like to learn all that stuff, it's like, oh, well, like, why am I'm not going to be playing jazz gigs, Yeah, but it really does change the way that you play. And the thing about that record is that there's so much rhythmic conversation when you're listening to the three of them. It's just like I'm getting goosebumps now. Even I would just walk like around campus, like listening. Like I'd miss my classroom because I'd just be like so dialed into what was happening, and would just hope that I could have that kind of like, real musical scenario when you meet a piano player or a guitar player, you play in a trio. Because when it's a trio, it's like there's no one's resting. It's right. It's active listening constantly. And so, and staying in time and being able to hear an idea and maybe add to that idea, but without losing the form, right? Like you still got to know where you are in the song. You can't just play, and you know what the beauty is, Ben, is the beauty is with this stuff, you can't play bullshit licks. Like it has to be, if you do something like that in a conversation that's so intense, it's the equivalent of just like repeating your sentence. So it's just like, what are you doing? Are you listening to anything that I'm saying? You could never do it that way. And that to me was like, this is just calling bullshit. You know what I mean? Like you have to be so involved in the music. And so anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but Jack, there's a few, like Tane was a big influence, and Bill Stewart, the unorthodox players, I guess.
Yeah. No, I love that. For the sake of time, because I want to respect your time, let's go to number 5. The album is 2 Drink Minimum. The release year is 1995. The artist is Wayne Krantz. Song choice is Whippersnapper, and the drummer is Zach Danziger. And Zach's actually not brought up that much in this podcast, so I'm happy he's getting his day in the sun here.
Do you know, have you heard, so this is just random or maybe coincidental, but like, so where they recorded this, have you been to the 55 bar?
I have, yes.
So you know that it's closed for good. It's closed. It closed down. So I wrote this thing out a few days ago and then saw, Keith was the one that I saw originally post it, Keith Carlock. Oh. Because I saw him there, I saw Zach there, all of my heroes, Wayne Krantz. I used to go there constantly, and now it's closed. Rest in peace. But yeah, this is where I first saw, Zach. And so, anyway, yeah, it's sad.
Oh, that's
closed,
a shame, man.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Whippersnapper.
I love his ride sound in this. Fast forward to like halfway. Wayne just like rips.
Okay. Here's
So,
halfway. Jump in right now. Talk about not taking rests.
And this is Tim LaFave on bass.
Oh, okay.
Tim is just like, I'll just hold this. I'll hold this down right here. Disgusting.
Yeah.
All three of these guys, man. Wait. The exit is incredible. Dude, being in the room when this happens is just the most hair-raising. Like, you feel the temperature in the room just immediately jump 5 degrees. Like, and everyone is like white-knuckled because, like, this is not just Zach. It's like, I mean, Wayne Krantz on his own is is just like he's a human metronome, and his sounds and it's like his time is just like, it's unlike any other. It's like playing with a drummer. Mm-hmm. I wish I had an opportunity to do that, but just from hearing like what Keith has said and what Zach has told me, like it's a dream, like he's so like rhythmically verbose and like just knowledgeable about where he's going, and there's no like second guessing. It's real firm and so inspiring. And so when you get the three of those guys in a room with all of this information, it's just like they're just passing around, and it's also dialed in just the most exciting. They're taking so many risks, and the tension and release is just like through the roof. And seeing that stuff live also just it really changed the game. And Zach in particular, that was what put him on my radar. And then like he's got the Wednesday Night Titans thing. Have you checked them out where they play like the wrestling videos?
No. With the video in the background, I've seen that online. Yeah.
Yes, like he's just the greatest, man. And but a conversation that he and I had too is just like a lot of this stuff, like the usability factor of that kind of stuff is so slim. But the takeaway, and I tell like a ton of students this, is if you haven't like sort of immersed yourself in that kind of like rhythmic transmission, it affects the way that you play the simplest of things, right? So your pocket is then like exponentially like just carved out because all of these things are just like, it's like the Matrix. They're all just like running down the walls, and you're just like, you could just be playing whatever it is, but you're hearing like it's all around you. And if your basic knowledge of rhythms is just like the core subdivision, maybe your ability to interact or even just play that time however it's needed, like sit the snare way back. I listened to the Brody episode. Like that guy is a perfect example of someone who has ultimate control, right? How much back? Sure. Okay. And the snare where? Got it. And the kick where? Like I met him in NAMM a couple years ago, the only time I went, and he was just the nicest guy. And his watching some of his stuff when he posted it, it's just super inspiring. It's like, what?
Yeah, there's a lot of quotes that I steal from what he said in that episode. Brody Simpson, by the way.
He's a wise, Brody Simpson, yes.
Although he's to the point where you just have to say Brody and people know, so.
Yeah, man. And But it was that same thing where like these group of guys are just, like just wizards at their own craft. And so these to me were like some of the, is that the last one?
That's the last one, man.
So I did this thing so many times. I'm not even sure.
I know, dude. I know. I'm sorry again.
No. It was super fun.
Well, dude, great information. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to give you a chance to do a little self-promotion. So where can people find you if they want to get lessons? Obviously, you do a lot of that now. You talked about that earlier. So how do people contact you, see what the hell you do?
So my website is a good place to start, just nickbaglio.com, and you can reach out there. Obviously, I'm on Instagram quite a bit, and that's at Nicky Bags, NICKYBAGZZ. Yeah, man, and I do a ton. I love working with folks, via Skype or Zoom that way, and also a ton of recording. I imagine that it's not just drummers, but predominantly drummers listening to the podcast. So, yeah, man, this has been super fun and very challenging to do. And I actually, I went down a rabbit hole and listened to a bunch of these episodes. And it's such a cool concept, and I think I like it because it's not like a regular, drum podcast. It's like you're making people think, and it's fun to see. When I saw, like, I started the Dom episode just before, and it's cool to hear what everyone's like. I wonder what that person would listen to. And I left out so many things; they were almost embarrassing. Like,
yeah.
Like, because people will judge you, like, basically, like, oh, do you listen to that? Like, one of those honorable mentions. I don't even know if I put it on my honorable mentions, but like, I played with a Queensryche record.
You did
I
put it
that
on there. Yeah, Empire.
Jesus, I played with that record for like the better part of like 6th grade and maybe 7th. I don't remember what year it was, but it was like. And I was just like, do I put this on here, or is it like that drummer Scott Rockenfield? Like, I don't know if anyone remembers this guy, but he was the first guy to put the cymbals on the chains. His cymbals were hanging from chains.
Oh my God!
So there wasn't a stand; they were just hanging from like a chain, and it was super.
He was the first
edgy.
and the last, or did that become a thing?
Yeah, they started swinging. He's like, "Fuck, keep missing these." No, that was probably the last. But. Yeah, man. And anyway, I really enjoy what you're doing. And obviously, I didn't plan to put all these big fat snare drum products on my drums, but I have like 10 of them. Yeah, it's just like I used them literally this morning on something. And it's also cool that you guys are just, great humans. And I hope that we get to connect. I'm sure we will at some point.
Yeah.
If I'm out there or you're out this way, man, like I said, you just let me know. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, so hit a brother up.
Dude, I'm surprised it took us this long to get on together. So I'm happy. You were my first one back. I'm relaxed. I'm in my echoey spot again that I need to work on sound treating this damn thing. But that's okay. Have a good day, man.
Same to you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks again for the opportunity, Ben. Thanks.
All right. Peace, dude.
Peace, buddy.
And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum, and you will find us. The show is edited in part using Isotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at isotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye.